Paducah. If you wanna, you can rhyme it with bazooka, but you can't poo-poo Paducah. That's another name for paradise. Paducah, Paducah, just a pretty little city in Kentucky, but to me it rhymes with lucky when I'm looking in your two blue eyes. Tulip time, they get excited over tulip time, but I'm delighted over julep time, because I happen to love a resident of Paducah. Paducah, if you wanna, you can rhyme it with bazooka.
Welcome to Paducah, Kentucky. If this is your first time, then this is my travel vlog. If you're returning, then welcome back to Sets, Streets, and Eats. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, then smash that notification bell. It keeps you up to date with all my weekly adventures. Paducah is in western Kentucky, right at the confluence of the Ohio and Tennessee rivers. I've lived in the Paducah area for, well, darn near 20 years now. And it's a great city filled with culture and food and amazing other things. So there's a lot of things I want to show you, but this episode I'm going to stick with mainly movie locations and some of my favorite lunch places. So let's travel. I'm Chris Bauer, and I am an art slinger. I travel around the U.S. selling artwork at comic and anime conventions, and while I'm there, I like to check out cool sites, eat great food, and see all the places my favorite movies and TV shows are made. Welcome to Sets, Streets, and Eats. So this is a muffaletta. It's a New Orleans classic kind of sandwich. I don't exactly know what kind of bread it is, but it's like really, really fluffy but crispy on the edges, fluffy on the inside. It's got like ham, looks like pepperoni, olives, a couple other vegetables and some cheeses on it. Really, really tasty, and Kirchhoff is known for it. It's really dense, like a Cuban sandwich, but not as, pressed down dense. Just really tasty. Really tasty. Oh my God. Well, you probably wouldn't know it by looking at it, but Paducah actually has a small but rich history as a film location for several Hollywood films, reaching way back. Start with Raintree County with Montgomery Clift and Liz Taylor. A classic film, How the West Was Won, with Jimmy Stewart, Debbie Reynolds, tons of other actors and actresses. Two different Tommy Lee Jones movies, River Rat and U.S. Marshals. In Country with Bruce Willis and Joan Allen. Couple locally filmed movies, Doom's Chapel Horror and Clock Out, which is just a shameless plug because I produced both those films and they're on Amazon Prime. Links below. So I'm going to take you around and show you to a few shooting locations from some old Hollywood movies. Let's go. Hey guys, I'm down at the Paducah waterfront. They call it base of Broadway, which is because Broadway Street, which is the main drag through town, dead ends into the river right here. This is where they had a scene from the movie River Rat filmed. Now, River Rat was starring Tommy Lee Jones and Brian Dennehy, and it came out in 1984. Tommy Lee Jones was already a name by then. He had done Coal Miner's Daughter and several high-profile TV movies, and they had a scene in the movie where they pull into port somewhere, and it's like a night carnival dance thing. And so they filmed all that right here. They had, I think it was filmed in one night. It was a 4 or 5 hour block of time where they had a whole bunch of extras out. And a buddy of mine, Alan Walters, was a extra in that scene, and he's actually dancing right behind Tommy Lee Jones and Martha Plimpton. I'll show you a screenshot. As you can just 0.1 second of fame. And anyway, so they filmed that all right here, and then they continued on down the river. They filmed really several locations all up and down the Ohio here in the Mississippi, in this region for that whole movie. And unfortunately it wasn't a huge hit. That's probably why you've never heard of it, but not for lack of star power, I would say. In Country was based on a novel by Bobby M. Mason. It was written back in 1984, and then it became a movie in 1988. So they filmed in Paducah and Mayfield, which is about 25 miles south of Paducah, and Reedland, which is a suburb of Paducah. The rights for the movie ended up in the hands of director Norman Jewison. He was a very old school director back then in the 80s. He had just come off of Moonstruck, which was an Oscar-winning film, but back in the 60s he had directed In He of the Night, which is a huge movie, and Fiddler on the Roof in the 70s, and many others. Behind me is the house they used for Emmett Smith's house. This was the character that Bruce Willis used. They did many scenes in the yard, and then they did the interior somewhere else. Right, you can sort of see here in the yard where the tree used to be. There used to be a big tree there. It's very prominently featured. And of course, that's the tree that Bruce Willis climbs into during the storm to yell at God. Very big scene in the movie. Anyway, as you can imagine, a lot of people would come out to watch them film, because 1988 Die Hard had just come out, and he was huge on TV and moonlighting. Die Hard made him a massive, massive star, and he was here in this area for 2 months shooting a movie. So you can imagine there was sometimes 100 or so people out watching them film. And the night that they filmed that storm, it was the same way. This whole block, I had to keep people away, but they were all out here watching everything be filmed. But this house is heavily featured in the movie. Obviously in way worse shape back then, but it's definitely been fixed up. But all the trees, the 2 big trees in the front are gone, and there's no rabbits to water in the garage.
America was the world's good Samaritan, and there was no place on the globe that an American couldn't walk tall, proud, respected, and safe. But along the way, our world has fallen, and our dreams have vanished, and we forgot our place in God's plan for America. Things need to be changed for the better.
So this is the Amphitheater at Noble Park. So as you can see, it's been updated a little bit, but it was still in the exact same spot. They built up the background from what it used to be there. Of course, made a bit more modern concrete bleachers. Not only was it filmed here for sure, I actually know people that were here, but if you'll notice, I'll put up a still of it, but right here at the edge, there was a telephone pole. And on that telephone pole, you'll see that even though the town was the fictional town of Hopewell, Kentucky, they still had a Noble Park. And that was right here. So, one of my favorite burger places in the U.S., and keep in mind, I have been coast to coast. I eat a lot of burgers, and one of my favorite places is right here in Paducah, and it's called Just Hamburgers. They do a specialty burger every week, they have a different one. They'll have like the Red Zeppelin, or this one, the Pharisees Philly, and many others. But I look forward to Pharisees Philly week. I think they do it 3-4 times a year. Probably more, I would think. I don't know. I look forward to it because it is consistently the best. It's in the at least top 2 best burgers of all time. I'm not kidding. Like, every single time I get them, it is absolutely amazing. And they're just spectacular. But I don't know what they put on. I've had Philly burgers from a lot of different places. But something about these ones, it's unbelievable. So, every time. I don't know what their secret ingredient is. I don't know what it is, but it'll make you lose your train of thought. Oh my God. Unbelievable how good these are. The Pharisees Philly. And it's not to say that a lot of their burgers aren't great. They really are. It's a spectacular burger place. And you know it's spectacular because every time around lunchtime, especially when they have a really hot weekly special, the line of cars, their Red Zeppelin line, is routinely 20 to 40 cars in line. It gets absolutely crazy that week. It's solid. Just Hamburgers, Paducah. Go check them out. So at the beginning of In Country, the main character Samantha jogs through this cemetery, right past these exact monuments. Actually, we see those on screen. The road is definitely new since they filmed, which is 30 years ago. So it was all just trees behind these statues, but the statues, of course, haven't changed at all. In Country was, I think it missed its audience because it was kind of ahead of its time. It was about PTSD. It was about soldiers that had to deal with it after Vietnam. We already weren't talking about PTSD after World War II and Korea, and Vietnam had a huge impact mentally on the soldiers that were there. And it's not talking about male mentality as we tend to do in our culture. Thank God it's gotten a little bit better, but it's still really, really rare then for anyone to talk about it out loud. But this movie dealt with it, and it really is a coming-of-age story. And the movie is packed with star power, and you probably have never heard of it, but it still holds up. Like, it's really a good film. But this is in Mayfield, Kentucky, and then the rest of the movie was filmed in and around Paducah area, or a little bit closer to Paducah. So still looks exactly the same as it would have been 30 years ago when they filmed it. So the last shot here in the cemetery is when Samantha runs out of it through the gates. I was going to try to pull the gates closer because they're the exact same gates that were used in the movie. They've been here for decades, and they're the United Daughters of the Confederacy gates. And but this one can't even actually move without, I fear that it would break if I try moving it anymore. But the gates are still here. They just stay open now, and they're not quite closed when Samantha runs through them, but they're obviously way closer together. But I think I can get them both in there. But yeah, the base of the shot just starts way up here and comes down to her running through. So Sam runs to a diner at the end of her jog. In the movie it was Chuck's Diner, and it was based on an actual place called Emma's here in Mayfield. Emma's is long since closed, but they actually didn't use Emma's. They built this as a set. It was right here. This was a gravel lot, and they built the entire diner just for the movie, and they tore it down afterwards. But she runs up that street when she's jogging. When they come out of the diner at the end of that scene, you can see the top of this building behind them, and that crosswalk is kind of your landmarks for placing where this was. But Stephen Tobolowsky, I forget the actor from Supernatural, he was in that scene, and the actor that played Tom, I always forget his name too, but he's been in a ton of stuff since then. But of course, Bruce Willis and the actress that played Sam. But yeah, they were all in this big scene right here, and they walk right up this sidewalk at the end of it and have a conversation with Tom and then with each other, and she jumps in the car with her boyfriend, and it all happened right here. So I am here at what is today the Western Kentucky Technical Community College. Sorry. It used to be a part of the Paducah Community College campus, and this is the gymnasium, the Hawes Gymnasium. Now, the reason I'm here is because the in-country production actually rented this gymnasium to film all of the interiors for a lot of the scenes, like Bruce Willis's house and several others. They actually built the interiors of the whole house right here in the gymnasium floor. And this is where Bruce Willis and the other actors would have their scenes. And then on the days they needed to be out front of the house, they would go to the location not too far from here and do the stuff that was in the yard. And then they would, of course, tie it in with movie magic. So this is the room. So I'm out front of the former Walter school. Back in the early 80s, this was a school that the production rented out to film the big dance sequence in. So the gymnasium has closed down, unfortunately, a few years ago, and it's kind of fallen into disrepair, but this is where they filmed the dance scene for In Country. And this is where Ken Jenkins, the actor that would go on to play Bob Kelso in Scrubs later on, him and Samantha, he was putting pictures of her father up on the board over there. There was a trophy cabinet on this side of the room, and then at the end of their conversation, they turned and went in the doors over there to the gymnasium. The really only indicator from outside that it is this is where the closing shot of Samantha jumping on the back of the motorcycle with Tom and driving off down the road. They shot this right out front here, and they went off and go up there and turn. So it's still really cool that it's at least still here a little bit. Anyway, another one of those locations still right here. So I'm out front of Irene's house, which was Sam's mother in the movie. Irene was played by actress Joan Allen, Oscar-nominated actress. The house is actually supposed to be in Lexington in the movie, but it's right here in Paducah. The scene is set up where Bruce Willis and Sam are taking Mamaw to Washington to see the Vietnam War Memorial, and they stop in Lexington on the way. Joan Allen, her baby in the movie, or Irene's baby in the movie, was played by Erin Hindley. Erin Hindley is actually now a local makeup artist. She does a lot of makeup and effects for movies and videos and a lot of weddings and proms and everything. Very, very talented makeup artist. But back then, of course, you know, she was just a year old and has no recollection of this, but her mom still remembers bringing her to the house here in Reedland to film. So this is my last location visit for In Country. I'm at Paducah Baptist Hospital, used to be called Western Baptist. The reason this is an in-country location is the summer of 1988 when they were filming here in Paducah, Bruce and his wife, actress Demi Moore, Demi was very, very pregnant with their first child, and second week of August, Bruce got the call on set to come rush and get Demi to the hospital, and they rushed her here, and this is where their daughter, Rumer Willis, was born. She's now an actress and singer-songwriter. I'm sure if Bruce was asked what his favorite memory was from filming in country, it's probably gonna be here.
Matt's going?
I'm here with my buddy Andy Evans. We're gonna go check out Branch Out. It's a vegan / vegetarian place here in Paducah, and we hear it's good. Oh, ooh, got cupcakes and everything.
Yeah.
Oh.
We have peach and cream cupcake, carrot cupcake. Over here we have raspberry white chocolate, cookies and cream, pumpkin spice donut, cookie monster donut, and vanilla donut with chocolate, mango soda lime,
Man! All right. This lobster roll. Numbers. This lobster roll is made up of palm hearts and several other vegetables. It's really tasty. It's got like a mayo type sauce that holds it together. We need to look at exactly what's on this. What's just so cool about vegan and vegetarian places? They use stuff that you're like cheese and pecan. So what? Why'd you make pecan cheese? Well, all right. So I'm here in downtown Paducah. Downtown's right behind me, and the river's over there. But I'm down here to show you guys something that's kind of very unique to Paducah, and it's the reason that Paducah is considered a UNESCO creative city, which is very rare. There's only like 3 of them in the US, maybe even world. And that's because I'm here at the National Quilt Museum. Now I know what you're thinking. Quilts are blankets, and yes they are, but they are also massively time-consuming and awesome pieces of artwork. And if you've never seen the Quilt Museum or even these quilting competitions that they do, you owe yourself to look at them. They are absolutely breathtaking, and the amount of work that goes into them is it's unbelievable. Some of these quilts are priceless, and they go for massive amounts of money. But it is a really cool place. Only takes an hour or 2 to see everything in it, and highly recommend going to it next time you're in Paducah. So we have some statues of Lewis and Clark, the explorers that walked to the Pacific Ocean and mapped out a lot of America in the early days. Reason for that is Clark of Lewis and Clark actually founded Paducah, and the reason for that is they were coming down the Ohio River. Ohio and Tennessee rivers meet right here in front of what would become Paducah, and they founded a city here. I think it was 1832, and it's been here ever since.
restless in another way. The kind who'd look at a mountain and see a watershed. Look at a forest and see lumber for houses. Look at a stony field and see a farm. Their faces and their instincts had been turned to the west ever since Plymouth Rock and Jamestown. The trapper's road was the trail of a wolf or the bend of a canyon. But for whole families, chafing to follow the sun, there had to be broader ways. There were no roads into the wilderness, only rivers. And they flowed in the wrong direction, north or south, or else they stopped at the Alleghenies. Until one day, a new river took source in the mind of a man named DeWitt Clinton. He conceived of a river that would go west. And in the way Americans have of acting out their dreams, it came to be. The Erie Canal left the Hudson above Albany and carried clear across to the Great Lakes. People who yearned for virgin land and a new life now had a highway to take them, and they moved along.
So I'm here in Smithland, Kentucky. Smithland, Kentucky was the launching point for the film, at least John Ford's segment of How the West Was Won. His segment, of course, had James Stewart and Debbie Reynolds and many other actors. There's like 26 stars in that film. John Wayne, Gregory Peck, I mean, tons more. Anyway, but the segment of Albany, New York, where the Debbie Reynolds family is heading west. That all actually was shot here in Smithland, Kentucky. And the spot right behind me is significant for this next scene.
Smith, the Stoker family, all 8 of them.
Is the laddie's health the reason you're heading west?
Partly.
So it's on private property now, but this was open for the movie. There was no fence there. And there was a long bench, or just the group of people were sitting along this tree, right in front of this tree. And that's really what's cool about this scene, is that tree's still here. You can see it right in the center of the screen. They have a huge music number right in front of it. Young Debbie Reynolds is playing the accordion, and the family's singing, and that tree, you know, it's been here the whole time, and it's not going anywhere. And but then they get called to the boats, and everybody files on past and goes on down to the boats there. But this was Albany, New York, in How the West Was Won, directed by John Ford. So back in 1960, when they were scouting Paducah for a very pivotal scene, they selected this that was mostly empty. It was called the Paducah Ice House at the time, but it was a good spot that they could build a set that they needed. Now, the scene is a very pivotal one in How the West Was Won, and it's the cave scene. So Jimmy Stewart's coming down the river, which ended up being the Ohio River, sees a cave that's basically set up for fur trading and to get a drink, blah, blah, blah. Enters the cave and finds a bar, makes a quick friend, and then turns out the bar's basically set up to rob fur traders and travelers of their goods and kill them. You can actually almost imagine a young Robert Rodriguez and maybe Quentin Tarantino looking at just that scene in the film and thinking, let's make this into an entire movie called Dusk Till Dawn. But I digress. Anyway, so the cave obviously was a real place, and that is Cave in Rock. It's about 45 minutes north of Paducah, up the Ohio River, up in Illinois. And very, very cool place. If you've never visited, please do. You can walk around it. It's a really cool little cave. Looks big, but it's not very deep. And it's good for the whole family. But anyway, the interiors of the cave were built inside this building. So they made the entire thing look like inside of Cave in Rock, put the bar in there. There's a well in there, which Jimmy Stewart gets thrown down after he's shot. Spoiler alert, but you've had 60 years to watch it, let's face it. So, but they built the whole thing inside here, and there's really no behind the scenes footage from that, but I was able to dig up, thank you JT Crawford of Paducah Life magazine, finding 2 photos that were taken just outside this building. We're going to look at those. So this fence, this gate, obviously whatever is here now has put up a gate. This was not here. But the cars would have pulled in and parked in rows against this building here. And they most likely would have used either that large entrance or a door entrance on this side. But while they were out here, after Jimmy got into wardrobe, he took a photo standing right here. And the reason I know he's standing right there is in the background of the photo, you see this corner of the building. There is this little flat strip right there that goes from these were windows, it's been blocked in since then, to this corner, and you can see that in the background of the photo. The rest of these little parameters all kind of match up as well, as you can clearly see as you're looking at the photo right now. But this is where the parking lot was. This is where Jimmy would have stood for that photograph. So the great James Stewart, or Jimmy Stewart, whatever you prefer, made a very, very cool Western right here on the south side of Paducah, Kentucky. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tour of Paducah. We only got to see a small piece of it because I don't have hours and hours or your attention spans for that long. But I definitely enjoy this city, and it's one of my favorite places to be. I travel a lot, obviously, for my job, and it's always good to come home and come down to the river, eat lunch, take a walk down Broadway, and just really enjoy the scenery and the look of the place. I mean, downtown they've kept pretty much identical to the way it always has been. Obviously new shops and restaurants move in and out, but they try to keep the buildings looking exactly the same, and I think that's really neat. But if you've never been to Paducah or seen Paducah or even heard of Paducah, you should change that. It's definitely a very special place to live, and I can only imagine how great it is to visit. So thanks for watching this episode of Set Streets and Eats, and we'll see you on down the road.
Paducah, Paducah, if you wanna, you can rhyme it with bazooka, but you can't poo-poo Paducah. That's another name for paradise. Paducah, Paducah, just a pretty little city in Kentucky, but to me it rhymes with lucky when I'm looking in your 2 blue eyes. Tulip time, they get excited over tulip time, but I'm delighted over julep time, because I happen to love a resident of